Let's get one thought on every game. We'll look back at what went right for the Eagles last night. What could they take from that game and move forward as they beat the 49ers 25-20 last night? NFL Insider KC Joyner, thefootballscientist.com, joins us now with one thought on every game that we saw yesterday and two Monday Night Football games tonight. Let's bring him into the conversation. And first, KC, the Eagles get a much-needed win. What did you like from what they did last night that maybe they can carry on and start to build some momentum with?
I liked a number of things, although a lot of last night's game was I tell you what, the biggest thing to take away from looking at it from the Eagles' perspective, because the 49ers did a lot of things wrong in that game, but from the Eagles' perspective, they said, we're going to find a way to do the things that they're going to let us do. We're going to find a way to do certain things, and we're just going to keep doing them. They concentrated on all the things that they could do well and didn't try and do a bunch of things they can't do well, and that was something that it just accentuated their positives to the point where they had a better shot at winning this game than we all thought. I think they've got some paths to victory more than I guess we thought coming on Friday.
Well, Carson Wentz, did he turn the corner? Was there anything better there? I mean, what did you see from him?
Well, they only threw two deep passes the whole game. Passes thrown 15 or more yards downfield. They only threw two. And one was to Rodgers that was incomplete, and the other was, of course, the touchdown to Fulgham. And that's one of the things I liked about it is, even though the 49ers were banged up in the secondary, that says two things. One, we're still going to take safe passes because it's a secondary you don't want to take big chances against. And two, when we decided to take a chance, we said, fine, we've got Fulgham. He's a backup. You guys are covering with Dante Johnson. He hasn't been a starter since 2017. In the last couple of seasons, he's only had 10 passes thrown his way. This guy was a backup cornerback for a reason. He wasn't that good, and all we had to do was beat him in a 9 route. So they saw we've got some things that we might be able to do against you personnel-wise because you're just as banged up in your secondary as we are in our receiving core, and it shows they said we're going to figure out things that we can do, which is something if they keep doing that, they'll have more chances like this.
Well, obviously last year they simplified things with the wide receiving core. Can they continue to play such a conservative way and be successful? I mean, it seems like they have to work so hard to get points on the board because they can't. Now, they did take the one shot with Fulgham last night, but, I mean, everything else is so underneath.
It is dink and dunk, and you don't really like to see dink and dunk, but they still averaged just over almost 11 yards per completion, so that's a good number, and the percentage rate was good. I like the idea, too, of Sanders he only got 46 yards on the ground, but he got 30 yards to receiving, so we're going to get him out on the perimeter, and plus I love the idea, too, we talked on Friday about how the 49ers are giving a lot of rushing yards to quarterbacks, either by scrambles or designed runs, a little bit here, a little bit there. Well, and Wentz and Hurts combined for 55 yards and a rushing touchdown. So they were finding ways to be able to get some productivity out of their offense. You can't keep dinking and dunking like this against a team that has a higher-powered offense than the 49ers did last night with Mullins, but you can do it if you've got teams that don't play that well. And there are a lot of teams, I think, who the Eagles, with their defense playing like it did, I think they could keep games close like this. So it's not a great formula for success, but it's probably a 4-10 chance versus 2-10.
Yeah, well, let's go to the defensive side of the ball. What did you think of Jim Schwartz and the defense last night? I mean, obviously, their defensive line, when it's going, that's their recipe for success.
San Francisco gave up on inside runs early, and they came back to it early in the second half. In the first half, they basically said they realized quickly, we can't run inside. We got to do everything perimeter. In the first quarter, they had success doing it, and then the Eagles said, fine, we're going to widen our splits. We're going to change. We're going to play a wider front. We're going to do things with our linebackers. We're going to start to take away your perimeters. And when that happened, San Francisco didn't have a good second option for that because they tried to do some things inside, and it just worked on occasion. But it showed that the Eagles' dominant defensive line inside was able to, when you can dominate a team like the 49ers inside, that says a lot. So I think it gives some positive vibes for the Eagles going forward because I think other teams are going to come to the same conclusion. We can't run inside against these guys.
Yeah, and obviously the linebacking core is still a problem for Philly. Teams are still going to go after them. Kittle had a monster night there. But overall, is this a recipe for being able, I mean, look, this isn't a Super Bowl roster. I think we can all say that. But in this division, did they find a recipe to maybe be 9-7, somewhere in that range?
Well, they're going to have a tough time the next 2 weeks. But the thing is a lot of what happened last night, if we're looking at it from a glass half empty perspective, was Mullins and some of the play calling. On both the interceptions, the 49ers only had one receiver in the area he was throwing to. I don't think that they called that. I think Mullins was, in both cases, expecting another receiver to be in the area, and somebody just didn't get there like he thought, because you just don't throw one player against three defenders in an area and say, hey, that's what we're going to do, and I don't think that's what they were trying to do. So they made a lot of mistakes last night. But the thing is, teams do make mistakes, and if you don't take the Eagles seriously, this sort of thing can happen. But the thing is, if a team makes mistakes to the way the 49ers did last night, you've got to be able to take advantage of it, and the Eagles did. So that's the biggest positive takeaway I could take out of it.
Well, obviously, they get a much-needed win there. And, there was the offensive line I thought was a little shaky, but it's tough to win going forward when you are out, your left tackle, your left guard, your right guard are all new pieces. Lane Johnson was in and out last night, but can you win with that offensive line?
You can't run gap plays. You can't run plays where you got to do man blocking. You can't say we're going to do head-on. And the 49ers didn't do a lot of last night. They didn't bring five guys up to the line of scrimmage to say, look, you're going to have to each block us individually. They were doing over and under fronts where you've got four men on the line. And if you do zone blocking against that, you might have six guys blocking four, and you can get double-team blocks, and you could still get effective running. So when another team is going to be more aggressive at trying to stop the Eagles' ground game, then I think it won't work as well. But I think that their line will be okay if teams block them the same way. By the way, though, before I mention, Johnston, the punter, 51 yards average on a gross average per punt. He only had one touchback and only 6 yards of returns, like 49 yards net average. I think that was a huge factor in last night's game. In fact, the Eagles got more expected points out of punting last night than they did out of passing or rushing. Huge advantage for them.
All right, so they win, and obviously moving forward, they got Pittsburgh coming up. We'll break that down on Friday with KC Joyner here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. One thought, every game in week number 4 is just where we are. And, of course, there was the one game that was canceled, and then there's another game that we played tonight. We got 2 Monday Night Football games, so we'll go over that, and we'll take a look back at all the action that happened yesterday. It was another wild weekend. I mean, there was just so many wild games that ended up happening in week number 3. So let's take a look with one thought on every game with KC Joyner here, thefootballscientist.com, 97.3 ESPN. All right, where do we begin? All right, let's go to Joe Burrow and his first victory of the year. And they finally get off the snide there to break that long streak of losing game. Minshew had 351. Mixon had a big game, but Joe Burrow looks like he is going to be something special.
Joe Burrow absolutely looks like he's going to be something special. I think he's the leader for Rookie of the Year right now. The Bengals still have a lot of weaknesses on their club, but when you have a great quarterback, it offsets those weaknesses. And think about what that team would be if A.J. Green actually showed up. Fantasy managers are pulling their hair out, and their offense could be too. But if they get somebody to replace him effectively and bring to that level, just imagine where Burrow could be.
All right, you go down to Cleveland and Dallas. What a wild game this was. Cleveland's up 41-14. Dallas comes all the way back. Just horrible defense from the Cowboys. Cleveland puts up 49 on them. Why did Dallas kick the on? I mean, it was just a wild game back and forth, but Dallas has some big trouble.
I don't understand why the Cowboys a couple of 3 years ago, they had that power offensive line and they controlled the offense, and it actually helped their defense because they could get favorable game situations, and it really just changed the whole dynamic. And then they just said, you know what? Instead of being a power offensive line, let's go get 3 wide receivers and let's get all this huge passing. Let's be a pass-happy team, and look what's happening to them. They get into shootout games that are losing against teams that, frankly, they're more talented than. So the Cowboys need to get back to what they were a few years ago, or else this is going to keep happening.
Yeah, they got some big problems on the defensive side of the ball. New Orleans 35-29 over Detroit. Detroit's up 14-0. Then, bam, here come the Saints. Unbelievable. They scored 35 straight down. Detroit tried to get back into the game, but, Detroit, what a disaster they have been since they let go of Jim Caldwell. But what about the Saints here?
Yeah, the Lions, I know I'm from Michigan, thinks I got Lions buddies, and even they're up 14-0, nobody thinks they're going to win. They've realized the Lions are still probably going to blow the lead. But the Saints, they finally got percentage offense going, and they finally were able to get some consistent drives going. It's the Lions, and you would expect that they would be able to do that. But if they can do that against the Lions, they can start doing better things, because I think their offense has been a little too inconsistent, even with the gaudy numbers. When you're looking at them on tape, it's not quite as consistent. So love the consistency, and I think it bodes well for them going forward.
All right, we go to Seattle and Miami. This was a good one for a little while. Well, an ugly one for a little while, I should say. Not a great one. That Seattle defense we know has been a problem, but not enough offense from Miami in this game. And Seattle over 30 points on the road in Miami. 360 from Russell Wilson is tough for the Dolphins to overcome.
Yeah, it is, and the Seahawks they made improvements in their secondary, and they need to keep getting better because, as we talked last week, they can't keep getting into these high-scoring games. But when you get up against the Dolphins, who just You're right. I mean, if Myles Gaskin is your best running back, and it's taking nothing away from Myles Gaskin, a good college career, he's not a great pro running back. When he's your best back and you don't have the kind of receiving core that the Dolphins have, I think that it's a problem for them. But it speaks well for Seattle that you can win that kind of contest.
All right, one thought every game. Let's go to L.A., where the Chargers and Tampa back and forth. The Chargers had a win, but this is the best we've seen from Brady. 5 touchdowns, 369 yards. Mike Evans had a big day. Tampa showed that they can get into a shootout.
Yep, they lose Howard to an Achilles. They had Godwin out. Evans went out for a short period of time. They have to bring Keyshawn Vaughn in. They've got all these changes in their offense, but it shows you that Brady's finally starting to master the Arians system, and I think that really is going to bode well for their offense going forward. Imagine if they can get healthy and get Evans and Miller and Godwin and all those guys healthy at one time with what they did yesterday. I think it would be scary for the rest of the league.
All right, so Brady wins again. Baltimore, Washington, kind of domination here. Tough day for Washington. Haskins actually went over 300 yards, but they got to start questioning about him down there. I wonder. Lamar Jackson had that big run. McLaurin had a big day, but Baltimore 31-17, even though they're not great offensive standouts. I guess Andrews had a pretty good day.
It's surprising that Baltimore didn't win this game by more, but then again they get up 28-10 and they kind of just cruise from then on out. They decided not to just crush these guys. But when Washington, give them credit, their coach has cancer. The quarterback is playing terrible, and they're still doing as well as they're doing. But imagine what the offense would look like without McLaurin if he goes out. I mean, that's how central he is to what they can do. So they've got to get a lot more weapons. And I think you're right. I think Washington has to wonder, do we have to make a quarterback change because Haskins it's not happening.
Yeah, he is. I guess it's hard to make an evaluation. I guess after such a short time, but I mean, I'm wondering if they have already kind of decided he is not our guy. We'll see what happens in Washington. They lose again after beating Philly in opening week. All right, Arizona, Carolina. This Arizona team really disappointing, but Carolina's starting to turn the corner a little bit. New coach, took a little while to get used to. Now Bridgewater has a good game, and the Panthers now have won their second streak. But Arizona, I think, is more the disappointing story here.
It is, and it shows that this is the difference between Seattle and Arizona. Seattle, every time they come to the East Coast and have to play an early morning game, or early morning for them, 10 o'clock kickoff for them, they're 9-0 last couple of years. I mean, they just dominate. They don't have any problem doing it, and Arizona does. And I think it's a big problem for them. And plus, Carolina, they're playing much better on defense, and Rule's got that offense going very well. I thought there'd be a pass-happy offense, especially once Davis had to replace McCaffrey, but Davis is being just as productive as McCaffrey. Imagine that they might have that as a 1-2 combination for the Panthers.
Panthers win 2-2, and Arizona falls at 2-2. Minnesota beats Houston 31-23. Houston's at home. They lose at home. Bill O'Brien fired today. I mean, you'll give up Hopkins. It's been completely backfired on them. Minnesota finally gets a win, and their defense finally tightened up.
It says something that I think management said when you lose those first 3 really tough games and the schedule is just overwhelmingly against you. I think that's one thing. But when you come home and you lose to a Vikings team that's played as bad as they have, and you only put up 23 points, I mean, against the way the Vikings defense has played, and you've got the Texans offense, and that's all you could do, that's a bad thing. And the Texans are the worst rush defense in the league. And usually rush defense is a lot about mentality and the kind of who you are as a defense physically, if you're just that way. And if you get dominated that much, I think it probably said to management, these players don't believe in this coach, and that's why we got to go.
All right, head to the Rams. A little tougher battle than we thought. What happened? Why was New York able to stay in this one?
I think the Rams' offense is not quite as good as their defense. I mean, the Giants are, they have the worst rushing offense in the league, and I think that's a big part of it. The Rams, I don't think their blocking is as good as it used to be in past years, and I think the Giants defense has not played horrible this year. They've not played well, but they've not played horrible, and just to add those factors together, and I think the Rams just, they haven't been able to get their ground game going because Henderson was out. He didn't play as well, and Brown's there, so they don't have the home run back. I think it's just a combination of factors, but I mean, the Rams got the win, speaks well for them.
Yeah, 17-9, a little fist fight there that Jared Goff just 200 yards. As they beat what we all think is a pretty bad Giant team there. So they fought pretty hard on that one. All right. Nick Foles, the starter, not as good as Nick Foles, the reserve here. They struggled big time on offense. Indianapolis has a pretty good defense here. But why the struggles for the Chicago offense?
Because the Colts are the best defense in the league. They're by far the best defense in the league. They are. I think they're better than Baltimore. Actually, I shouldn't say by far. I think it's either them or Pittsburgh. But the Colts are playing more consistently. The Colts have allowed the fewest yards per play. Even coming into that game, they did, and they still are going to be the league leader probably after this week. So they're that good, and plus they have that power offense. They don't have to go out and score 40 points or 30 points they can get in these sorts of games. And I think what the Colts are doing right now is going to be the sort of thing that's going to travel well for the rest of the season. All these teams are getting into shootouts. They're going to figure a way to not get into them, and the Colts are going to be ready for that already. So I think the Colts are maybe one of the top 3 teams in the league.
Yep. Let's see the Buffalo Bills going on the road down to Vegas. This one I thought was interesting to see if Buffalo could do this. You know, they were a favorite on the road. Allen gets hurt, then he comes back. As soon as he comes back, boom, he gave him a spark. Disappointing loss, I thought, at home for Vegas.
It was very disappointing. They didn't play nearly as well as their talent level is. They weren't able to control that offensive line the way teams have. Finally, the Bills, though, I count a shootout game as when each team scores 24 or more. The Bills only give up 23, so it technically doesn't count. So they're getting closer to not getting a shootout games, but they've got to do even better than this because they're still too close to it. And I think it showed yesterday that if Allen gets hurt or even a couple of injuries in that offense, that they're not going to be quite as powerful and they're going to have some problems. But so far, it's working.
Good stuff. All right, let's look at tonight's matchups. New England, Kansas City. We talked about this one on Friday because we thought this game was going to happen on Sunday. That got bumped to Monday. But this game's different now than the one we previewed on Friday's segment. Casey, you got Brian Hoyer playing quarterback instead of Cam Newton. How does that change the dynamics?
I think the thing, if the Patriots can get the Chiefs into playing smash mouth football, because the Chiefs are trying to do a lot of that, a lot more than they did, as we talked about, that want to get into those shootout games. If they can get the Chiefs to play that type of smash mouth game, and the Patriots play a type of smash mouth game, and it'll be a 24-21 game, which the Patriots have a better chance of winning than people think. I still think the Chiefs win it, but if the Chiefs can't find a way to go hit some of those big plays and turn it into that type of contest, I think the Patriots are going to keep it closer than people think.
All right, and then the late game tonight. I guess there's 2 games tonight. You got the 7 o'clock and then a 9 o'clock. They're moving the original Monday Night Football game back. We'll have it for you here on 97.3 ESPN. Atlanta really struggling. Green Bay, maybe one of the top 5 teams in the league right now. Offensively, they've been great. What kind of matchup do you see in that one tonight?
Be very curious to see what kind of game plan the Packers have because they've got the best offensive line in the league, arguably, and the Falcons they've got a terrible secondary and a terrible front 7. If the Packers try and get into a passing duel, then the Falcons might be able to keep up with them, and I think the Packers are going to try and slow things down. So be curious to see if they do that. I think that they will, but because they have both paths to victory, even they got Adams back and Marquez Valdez-Scantling is going to be a good replacement for Lazard. Between those things, I think they have more firepower than the Falcons either way, but I think the Packers will run for 200 yards tonight.
All right, wow, that's a big game. We'll have it for you on 97.3 ESPN. Real quick thoughts on Bill O'Brien getting fired. Was that the right move? I mean, what was does the Hopkins thing have a hand in here, or just 0-4? I mean, is he just not doing a good job? That team seems like they have the talent to win.
You look at the press conferences yesterday, and the players. Bill James used to say when a manager would say, "I'm not sure how to fix a problem," you need to fire the manager because if they don't think they can fix the problem, then the players are going to believe it too. And I think Bill O'Brien, after his press conference, he looked like he was out of it, like he just couldn't figure out how to solve this. I think the players are getting onto that, and I think the GM issue, it's a big problem because let's say they go 5-11 this year. They've already traded those high draft picks elsewhere. So I mean, they went for win now, and when you go for win now and you go 0-4, you might lose your job.
And he did today. 0-4, the Texans, they get rid of Bill O'Brien. Now, let me ask you this. A lot of people talking about Eric Bieniemy. Would you see a scenario where an offensive coordinator would leave his team in mid-year to go be a head coach somewhere else?
I don't think it sets a good precedent. I mean, I think he's going to be a good head coach. I just don't think it sets a good precedent. And Bear Bryant used to say that I'm not going to go somewhere else until I finish what I'm doing where I'm at. And right now, Eric Bieniemy is the offensive coordinator of the Kansas City Chiefs. He needs to finish what he's doing there. And if the Texans want him that much, their season's probably not going anywhere. You can hire him in January or February.
All right, Casey's back on Friday for one thought on every Week 5 game. And, of course, he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Casey, thanks.
Appreciate it.